Those of you who are in the lectionary Bible study on Sunday mornings may have noticed that I am not preaching from the assigned lectionary text. My apologies. You see, when I selected the scriptures for this month, I somehow managed to skip a week. And I didn't notice that until we were talking about the scriptures for October 7th. And then when I looked back, I noticed that September 30th and October 7th were the same scripture, and I said, something's not right here. So I realized that I skipped a week in September, and rather than do the whole month over, since we already have the music and everything, I just moved that one for this week to the end of the month. So y'all are going to be, a week ahead of me or behind me or something. Anyway, the rest of you probably haven't noticed and most likely don't really care all that much. Unless you study the lectionary readings at home before church, Sundays, yes? Yes? No? No. Okay, fine. Today's reading from James is a cautionary tale about the evil that comes out of our mouths. The tongue, untamable, a small flame of fire, a world of evil at work in us, set on fire by the flames of hell, a restless evil full of deadly poison. Reading this passage, it becomes easier to understand why some nuns and monks take a vow of silence. If you're trying to avoid sin, best not to use that which James says contaminates our whole lives. Blessing and cursing coming from the same mouth. Now, when we modern folks think about cursing, we tend to think about those individual words that are not acceptable in polite society. You know the ones. The ones that lead folks to respond with comments like, "Do you kiss your mother with that mouth?" And indeed, we should try to always only use words that everyone around us finds acceptable and inoffensive, and not the expletives that we tend to associate with bad behavior. But when James spoke of cursing, it wasn't that kind of language he was talking about. He was speaking of actual curses. One person wishing evil upon another. Saying, "Damn you to hell," was not just bad language, it was a big deal. Because people in the first century believed that words had that kind of power. "May the fleas of 1,000 camels infest you," may be kind of a joke to us, but it was serious business back then. I don't even want to think about it. The victim of such a curse would immediately go out and try to find somebody to lift the curse, break it, get rid of it somehow. And whereas we might say, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never break me," and I'll come back to that later, for the people that James was speaking to, words had real power. Blessings and curses were serious business. Blessings and curses should not, indeed, come out of the same mouth. Jesus also spoke about the importance of words. He said, "How can you speak good things while you're evil? What fills the heart comes out of the mouth." And certainly what comes out of our mouth is a reflection of what we're thinking. I attend a discussion group once a month where we talk about the issues we have in interpersonal relations and relationships. At our meeting this week, the leader of our group said she was making a concerted effort to curb her tongue. It had been brought to her attention that people often find her a bit abrasive and intimidating. She does not suffer fools lightly, and tends to be a little sarcastic, saying what she thinks without reflection or considering how it might be heard. So, she said, she was focusing on taking a beat, not reacting with her first thought, but responding after taking a moment to reflect. She said she also needed to watch her face, because even if she managed to bite her tongue, her facial expressions tended to give her away. And she said, it's hard. It's hard to do those things. Throughout the entire evening, therefore, we were entertained by watching her bite her tongue whenever a question or comment triggered a reaction. But she really did pretty well overall. I confess I have the same problem, and it really is hard to watch my tongue and facial expressions sometimes. And I would just like to point out that it's not only the spoken word that can be problematic, but also written. In James's time, not all that many people could write, so it wouldn't have been a consideration for most. Today, most people can read and write, so we need to expand our understanding of tongue a little bit, I think. Just as we might need to watch our tongue in a personal spoken response, so too we need to watch how we react to comments on social media. Our comment need not be sent the very second it's typed, especially if we're reacting out of anger or hurt feelings. Just as one in writing a letter, with a pen and stuff, when we're responding to something that upsets us, ought to hold on to that letter for 24 hours before mailing it, so too we should do that electronically. You don't have to click send immediately. You can't unsend it. Remember that on social media there are no tones of voice or facial cues or body language to help us judge what the other person is really saying, and emojis do not do a good enough job of reflecting one's mood or intention, so don't even go there. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never break me. The intention of this children's rhyme was to persuade the victims of name-calling to remain calm and non-reactive, not to retaliate in kind, but to be a good Christian child. According to Wikipedia, it is reported to first have been published in the Christian Recorder of March 1862, a publication of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Today, although we do hope people will respond lovingly to evil words, we understand that words might break a person. September is Suicide Prevention Month. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 24. And although, according to the Centers for Disease Control, bullying has not been proven to have a direct link to suicide, statistics do show that any engagement in bullying, as either the bully or the victim, does increase the chances of suicide-related behavior in teens and young adults. Reporting incidents of bullying, verbal or physical, is important, not just so the bully can be punished, but so both bully and victim can get the help they need, because they both need help. Teaching our children about right speaking is a huge responsibility, and that responsibility lies with parents, church, and schools. All of us working together. Right speaking, like that. Hearts coming out of the mouth. It's one of those love things. Loving our neighbor includes watching our tongues, speaking blessing only and never curse. And we can't just teach it, we have to do it. We can't do that whole do as I say, not as I do thing. Do you know what the number one reason is that people don't come to church?
Parents don't come.
No, not because the parents don't come.
They're a bunch of hypocrites.
It's because hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. Christians say one thing and do another. They preach love and they talk trash about each other in the parking lot. They preach love and they reject this group or that one. People, we cannot afford to do that. We cannot say one thing and do another. We must practice what we preach. We must do and say the same things. Not just so people will come to church, although that would be good. And not just so our children will live longer, mentally healthier and emotionally healthier lives, but because it's the right thing, the loving thing, the Christian thing to do. Yes, we will make mistakes. We will misspeak. We will be tired or hungry or have just had it up to there, and we'll say something hurtful or even maybe untrue. James knew that, and so he said, we all make mistakes often, but those who don't make mistakes with their words have reached full maturity. This is why I'm glad we talk about growing in faith and not being grown. One of my favorite expressions in 12-step meetings has to do with growing in this way. We can't think our way into good acting, but we can act our way into good thinking. I can spend all day long thinking that I can control my tongue and only say nice, loving things to people, but I will continue to say the wrong things until I'm diligently working at not saying them. And eventually, having worked at it consistently for some period of time by biting my tongue and avoiding the oh-so-obvious eye roll, the reactions that are normal today will no longer be my first thought. By working at not saying the sarcastic, possibly hurtful thing, eventually, I will start thinking differently, and that will not be my first response anymore. As I continue to practice right speaking, I will make fewer mistakes. I will become more mature in living my faith. In last week's passage, we heard James say everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to grow angry. And this is what we must do if we would be the kind of speakers that attract others to our faith, the kind of speakers who show the world what it truly means to be Christian, speakers who take the time to consider the right response, the loving response. Speakers whose words reflect only and always the love of Christ. Speakers who have clearly given their lives to God. Sisters and brothers, would you stand and join me in asking God to accept our lives, our words, and our will, singing hymn number 609, Take My Life.